Good afternoon. Welcome to the third session for today. Trust you've all had a great weekend so far. Welcome to this session. Hello, can you hear me? Okay, you're all welcome to this session. The speaker for today is on standby. I just want to be sure she can hear me. Tom, can you hear me? Okay, I think your audio is not connected, so you might want to fix that. So let me know if you can hear me, Tom. Okay, welcome Adedoyin, welcome Blessing, Harriet, Judith, Baseki, you're all welcome. Thanks for joining again. I hope you are not tired of learning. Are you as excited as you were on the first time you joined? Let's try and keep the energy up. We are almost at the finish line. This is the end for today, and then we would have 9 more sessions to go. So at this point of the conference, we've done 20 sessions so far. 20 sessions, 20 amazing and insightful sessions. I hope you all agree with me. Sure, they've all been great and you've gotten value from all the sessions we've had so far. So we have 10 more sessions to go, starting with this one. We are now at the close to the finish line for this conference. So thank you once again for joining, giving a couple of more minutes for more people to join. So I don't know, I think your audio is not connected, so I'm not sure we can hear you. So you might want to fix that before I introduce you and hand over to you. Okay, sorry for the break. Just trying to sort out the audio from the speakers end. For those joining us on YouTube, you're welcome. Awolaja Adedayo, I see you. Thank you for joining. Um, Let me see. Ibere, you're welcome. Adewumi, you're welcome. Juliet, thank you for joining.
Hi.
Oh, great. We can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry, I'm used to using my phone.
Okay. Great. Great to have you here. Okay, I'll
Thank
be
you for.
introducing you shortly and then hand over to you so you can dive in.
Okay. All right.
All right. Just taking a roll call of the attendees here. Olabisi, you're welcome. Olawade, you're welcome. Onyade, you're welcome. Thank you all for joining. So just want to know, hope people are not tired. We've had 20 sessions. We have 10 more sessions to go. So we are on the last leg of this virtual conference. Trust you still have some energy to keep up with us. Adewumi says, thank you, Adonai, for putting this conference together. You're welcome. Right. Okay. So for this session, we are going to be looking at an important topic, which is building a mentally healthy workforce in the new normal. Speaker for today is Tony Roberts, and let's meet her quickly so that we can start. It's been a long day. We won't take any more of the time, so let's get right into it. Yes. So Oyeton is a human resource generalist with over 10 years experience working for SMEs across different industries, spanning consulting, e-commerce, retail, and advertising. She holds a master's certificate of achievement from Edinburgh Business School in Human Resources Management, as well as certificates in HR hiring practices and business management from the University of South Africa. So prior to setting up HR on Wheels, gained invaluable work experience from Philips Consulting, tHRive Limited, Alari and Etsu Limited, and Dilde Limited. Sorry about that. And she earned her skills in recruitment and selection, HR process outsourcing, HR function setup, employee relations, performance management framework, design and implementation, learning and development, and compensation and benefits administration. She's, she's a certified senior professional in human resources international, that's the SPHRI certificate from the Human Resources Certification Institute, USA. So with a warm welcome, let's give a loud ovation, standing ovation to Tom Roberts. Thank you for joining. Thank you for giving us of your time here. We trust that this will be a fantastic and insightful session. I'm really looking forward to this topic.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Sorry about that, Jide. I thought you had finished. Thank you for having me. And again, I'm grateful to you and to the Adulam team for giving me this opportunity. Also, I'm just going to share my screen so that everyone can see the topic of today's webinar, which is very dear to my heart, and simply because a lot of people go through mental health related issues, but because the disease, I won't even call it a disease, the situation or the issue hasn't gained popularity here in Nigeria. A lot of people go through it in silence. So I'm not a psychologist, But as an HR professional, we know that the total well-being of all employees should be our top priority. And so looking at all the speakers before me, I realized that nobody has taken this topic. And that's why I decided to say that I will do a little bit of research and then come and share my findings with my fellow professionals here this afternoon. So again, Jide, thank you so much. Okay, so the format of today's webinar is going to be a little bit of, the findings again, like I said, what I found out, and how what I found out can be related to what is really going on, the realities, as well as sharing personal stories and personal experiences that I'm sure that some of us can relate with, even though we may not have been able to pinpoint at the point or at the time that this particular situation or circumstances are mental health related. Okay, so we go straight into the learning objectives for this afternoon. And what we plan to do again, like I said, is for us to be able to understand the importance of building a mentally healthy workforce. The mental state of employees is as important as their physical state. So if an employee says, I'm mentally tired or fatigued, and then somebody else says, oh, I have a headache or I have a malaria, the importance we place on the person that says, I'm mentally fatigued should be the same as we place on someone that says, I have symptoms of malaria. Because without the mind, you can't produce anything. So we're also going to be creating open conversations about the reality of mental health issues. And we'll identify the influence of the workplace, how the workplace affects mental health related issues. And then COVID-19, the almighty COVID-19, what it has come to do, and how a lot of people are struggling mentally. We need to be aware of that. We also need to be aware of the fact that as HR professionals, we have responsibilities to the organizations we work for or work in to bring mental health issues to the fore so that leadership can make informed decisions along these lines. All the decisions that will be made post-COVID should have mental wellness as part of it. So we'll look at that as well as we go on. So I know that the chat box is open and there's an allotted time for Q&A, but as we go ahead, I will check the Q&A, the chat box from time to time to see if there are any questions. And I'll be asking a couple of questions as well for you to contribute or for you to agree or disagree with, so that it's a learning experience for all of us. All right, so let's go straight into it. If you look at the slide, the first slide that you're looking at right now, it says, when you hear mental health, what comes to mind? Sincerely, from my own experience, up until 2018, I didn't really understand what it meant to have a mental health disorder or to have a mental health disease or illness. Because on this side of the world, mental health is associated with so many things. Some people say it's spiritual, some people say it's one thing or the other. But what I've come to realize over time is that mental health, there are several factors that contribute to our mental health well-being. And so when you hear mental health, the first question, and as many people as can type into the chat box, just let me know what comes to your mind when anybody says, what's your mental health status? What comes to your mind? The second question I'm asking, which will be addressed in the slides that will follow, is when you hear that someone is dealing with a mental health issue, what goes through your mind? Again, for me, the first time I had a close encounter with someone who had a mental health issue, I kept asking, oh, why? What could have gone wrong? What is going on? Is this spiritual again? Like I said, on this side of the world, the first thing is it spiritual? What could have triggered it? And all sorts of things, played through my mind and the minds of everyone who was involved with this very close case that came close to home. Then the third question is, do you know the source or triggers of mental health disorders? A lot of us hear it, oh, somebody has a mental health issue, but we don't know. Again, like I said, in the case of the person that was close to home, we were trying to figure out why. We were trying to figure out what went wrong. Didn't we pay enough attention, or what exactly is the case? So all of these three questions we will try to answer. So I will go back to them from time to time. We'll try to answer them with the rest of the slides that I've put together this afternoon. So the next slide says mental health, the myths, the facts. Again, we have preconceived notions about what mental health is and what it isn't. But from available data and available information, which every one of us can take time out to research after this webinar, mental health is defined as a state of well-being in which every individual is able to realize their potential. It's as simple as that. When I started, remember I said that everything happens in the mind. Your mind is the engine room of who you are as a person. And so when you are not in that state, when that engine room is not in a state of well-being, then it cannot function as it ought to function. So that's the definition provided by WHO, which you can verify when you do your own research. I would encourage everyone to do some research about this very important topic. So again, the other point I'd like to bring to the fore is that mental health has been gaining significant attention. Again, I said I became conscious about it 2 years ago, but in the last 5 years, a lot of people have been saying, what is the mental status? What's the mental health status of your employees? What's your own mental health status? Are you pressured? What's the life expectancy? Is it shortened by stress factors? What exactly is going on with us as human beings? Has the pressure increased or has it decreased? And what impact is it having on our overall state of mind and well-being? Again, the other thing I would like to point out is that, like I said, many of us used to think that mental health disorders or issues emanates from this side of the world, spiritual causes. But what we've come to find out, what psychologists and scientists have come to find out is that mental health has biological, psychological, and social factors that are responsible for it. Now, what do we mean by biological? It's been found that some people, the way their genes are, they are prone to developing mental health disorders than some other people. And also, even if your genes or your biological makeup makes you more susceptible to mental health disorders, what has also been found out is that social factors, what you think about, what you've been exposed to, also has a great impact on whether or not you'll be able to function properly. Your state of mental health can be considered healthy. So the social factors could sometimes range from, how did you grow up? What are the stressors in your life? How are you handling them? The environment you live in, is it aggravating your stress level, or is it just normal? Is it supporting your mental well-being? So these are the social factors that contribute to mental health disorders, apart from the biological and the psychological. The psychological can come from abuse. So were you abused as a child? Are you going through some form of marital abuse? Are you going through bullying in the workplace? All of this, over time affects your psyche, affects your psychological ability, and so can result in a mental health disorder or a mental illness. Now, as we go along, I'm going to differentiate between a mental health disorder and then a mental health illness. So both of them have a level of correlation, but they are different in the way they manifest. Okay. Now, the other point I'd like us to note is that 1 out of every 6 people working, gainfully employed somewhere, whether it's a blue-collar job, it's a white-collar job, 1 out of every 6 people will suffer mental illness or will suffer some form of mental disorder. And again, like I said, the last point is that there's a difference between mental well-being or mental disorder and then mental illness, which we're going to be looking at as we go along. Again, you can type questions, comments in the chat box, and then we'll pick it up from there as we go on. So I decided to look at some of the myths or misconceptions we've had over time about mental health, and then the facts, so that after today, we would, have a different approach to how we deal with people that may be going through these difficult points in their lives. So some of the myths and some of the facts, I just extrapolated 3. I've just brought out 3 to the fore. There are so many others, but these 3 are critical because they apply to how we deal with mental health on this side of the world. And so it will correct some of those misconceptions that many of us have about mental health disorder or mental illnesses. So the first point here is that a lot of us, and I would say I inclusive, when I see somebody who suffered or who is suffering mental health illness, maybe walking on the road, I say, oh, maybe it is spiritual, maybe something happened, maybe this, maybe that. We come up with all sorts of excuses as to why this illness came upon them. Or we hear of somebody whose relative is receiving treatments, and then we begin to make assumptions. But the reality is that when we stigmatize people who go through this illness, we are discriminating against them, and it is a form of oppression. And that stigmatization has a name. In fact, it was in the course of putting this webinar together that I found out that when you discriminate against someone who is going through a mental health disorder or illness, then what you are doing is called sanism. So it means that after today, many of us will desist from, trying to label anyone that has at one time or the other, or that is going through mental health disorder or mental health illness. We will stop the stigmatization against them, and we will be more empathetic and understanding. So some of the myths, one of the first myths that we're going to be looking at is the one that says having a mental illness means you're crazy. The truth of the matter is that having a mental illness does not mean you're crazy. It just means that you're vulnerable and there's an untreated illness in your body that needs attention like any other part of the body. Again, I used the malaria analogy when I started. When you have mental health disorder or illness, it doesn't mean you're crazy. It just means that you're sick and you need medical attention. The second myth is that having a mental illness means the person can perpetrate violence. Now, we know that a mental illness, affects your ability to think, to reason, your ability to function as everybody expects. But the truth is that many people who suffer mental disorder or mental illness, while they are suffering it, they are not aware of what they're doing. So if their actions or inactions result in violence, it is not the intention. It is a reaction that is uncontrollable. And so it does not mean that they should be labeled as violent. So The fact about that myth is that persons with mental illness are more likely to be victims of violence because people would then try to hit them with a stick, calm them down in one way or the other, just to be able to suppress the uncontrollable emotions that they are reacting, that is evident to everyone. Then the third myth is that mental health disorder only happens to the weak. The truth of the matter is that I have come to find out that it can happen to anyone. And I would explain in more detail as we go on, because there are several pointers to the fact that everyone at one point or the other in our lives would have a mental disorder. However, temporary, some people it might be longer, some people they may not recover fully from it. But at every point in everyone's life, our mental states will be challenged based on several factors that we're going to be considering. So some key data and figures that you should be aware of. The first one, these figures were gotten from the WHO, and Al Jazeera did a survey at some point, like an interview with the Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital in Lagos, and this is some of the data that is available about mental health issues and disorders in Nigeria and then globally. So the first data says that depression and anxiety cost the global economy about $1 trillion every year, meaning that the number of people that suffer from depression and anxiety and the implication on the economy, on the productivity of the workforce is impacted to a tune of $1 trillion every year. Now let's bring the statistics and data home to Nigeria. This was quite alarming for me when I saw it. It says 1 in 4 Nigerians, that is 50 million people, are suffering from some sort of mental illness or the other. The second data says there are less than 150 psychiatrists in Nigeria, with only 8 federal neuropsychiatric hospitals. So if you look at the ratio of people who are considered suffering from one form of mental illness or the other, to the ratio of hospitals and then to the ratio of psychiatrists in the country, you'll see that there's a huge disparity. The other statistic that got me alarmed is that 7 million plus Nigerians suffer from depression, which accounts for about 3.9% of the population. Yes, we may say that, oh, that's not such a high number, but if we look at 7 million in view of our own immediate environment, if we drill down on the data, we'll see that it's closer home than many of us would have thought or imagined. Now, it also says, one of the data also says that fewer than 10% of mentally ill Nigerians have access to the care they need. That is not surprising, considering that we have only 150 psychiatrists in the country and 8 federal hospitals to treat this specialty case in the country. It also says that Nigeria ranks 15th in the world in the frequency of suicide. And we all know that suicidal cases don't just happen. They happen as a result of depression, as a result of other factors. But we rank 15th in the world, and I don't think that is good enough. We need to pay closer attention to the number of people who suffer from depression in Nigeria. Nigeria has Africa's highest caseload of depression, and over 4 million Nigerians suffer from anxiety disorders. Remember when I started, I said that mental health disorder or issues is not just the common ones that we know, like the people we see on the road and we say, oh, this one has gone mad. They've not gone mad, they just have a mental illness. But the reality is that if you've ever suffered depression, if you've ever been anxious, overly anxious over something, maybe, about your job, about your marriage, about your work, about your business, chances are that at some point you were very low, your mental state was very low, you weren't productive, and so maybe you didn't even record yours. So neither of us personally would have gone to a hospital to say, oh, I'm feeling depressed or I'm anxious. So even, this data that we have here may be underrepresented. But the key thing that this particular slide is trying to do is to bring to our consciousness that this issue is more prevalent than we think, and we must pay close attention to it, especially in times like this, which puts more pressure on us as human beings and as HR professionals. Okay. Okay, so the next slide we're going to be looking at is talking about the workplace and mental health issues. What is the correlation? Some people will say, oh, people come with their issues and then they bring it to the organization. And so the organization begins to find a way to help them manage it. The truth of the matter is that the workplace can either be a place of comfort or a place where, the pressure point of people is increased the more. And I'll explain what I mean by that. A lot of people say that, because of their family circumstances, when they escape to work, it takes off that pressure from them Monday to Friday. But what the COVID-19 pandemic has done to many people who had that escape route in their offices or in their jobs is that it has made them to be in the middle of what they were trying to escape from, or it has made them to lose out on their coping mechanism, which is finding solace in their work or finding solace with their colleagues, their friends, and their colleagues and friends in the workplace, rather than being in the environment that triggers their mental health disorder. Again, when I use the word mental health disorder or issues, don't forget that depression is one of it. So if you're not in your happy place at home or at work, and you're constantly fatigued, you're tired, you may be suffering from depression. So let's just look at what I put up, on this particular slide, which says that several research and findings show that there's a direct correlation between employee performance and their psychological well-being. That is, employees who are belabored by one problem, one difficulty or the other will not be at their best because they are torn in between fixing the issue that they have and then performing on the job. So when there is that place where an employee is not mentally balanced or mentally stable, they cannot perform to expectation. They may be doing the barest minimum, but you can imagine if everything was well, if they were in their happy place in their mental state, right? How much more they'll be able to accomplish. So it's important for us to pay close attention to employees' mental states. Their mental wellness is very, very important, because when they are happy mentally, when everything is, all the factors that make up the human life is working in balance, in tandem, then you realize that the employee has no baggages. They don't have any, they don't come with extra burden. They come in able to create, able to contribute. They come in happy. They come in willing. They are not coming in just because they need the money to be able to meet a need. They're not coming in just because they just want to leave their homes and then find some form of escape routes from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. They're coming in because they want to be a contributor to your organization. So employers, HR professionals, we need to pay close attention to our employees' psychological well-being so that we can show, we can see the evidence in their performance. We've also said here that while one of the findings in putting this webinar together shows that people who are not employed may be prone to depression, okay? While people who are employed may also be prone to depression. Now, if you look at one side of the first side of the example of people who are not employed, who are prone to depression, it is safe to say that once they get a job, right, their depressive states will be lifted, correct? And then those who are employed but are also prone to depression, you would ask yourself why? Because it's been proven that if you're not employed, you may have a higher chance of going into depression. So, what is paramount and what this particular slide is trying to say is that while the workplace helps to combat depressive tendencies, it can also aggravate it. Meaning, I may have been unemployed and then I was maybe depressed when I was unemployed, and then I get a job. But the job I then got, maybe I was happy for a while. And after maybe a few months, I begin to see that I'm working in an environment where I am not cared for. I'm working in an environment where, things are not the way I expected them to be, and I can't have a voice. Then I may slump back into my depressive state. And so that's what this particular slide is trying to say, that the fact that the workplace helps people get out of depression because now they have a means of livelihood, they have a sense of community and more. The workplace can also be responsible for making people depressed. So we need to be able to find that balance. And that's what we've tried to point out in this particular slide. So some of the, I'll just read from, while work promotes mental well-being, findings also show that employees working under extremely difficult work conditions, they are more susceptible to develop mental health related issues caused by excessive stress, mental exhaustion, unfair pay practices, workplace bullying, job insecurity, and other oppressive behavior. So for the workplace, again, the emphasis of today's webinar is that if we want our employees, if we want our businesses to generate better results, we must pay attention to the people that work for us. Their total well-being must be our priority so that our bottom lines can be affected. Okay, so this next slide is just pointing us to the facts, well, to some of the factors that make a workplace unhealthy mentally. The first is poor job designs and lack of review as needed. What that simply means is that I'll use an example of a small business because this is typical of many small businesses. I run a small business, so I understand, how, we try to make employees do everything and almost anything without creating that balance of, what are their strengths, what are their interests, the employees now, and then what is the job that we need done, right? How do we ensure that in designing our jobs, we're considering the right fit. We're considering the employee that is balanced enough to be pulled from point A suddenly to be pulled to point Z without affecting their mental state. What that simply means is that in our recruitment processes, we need to go back to the drawing board and say that this particular job, what is the temperament? What is the personality? What is the person specification that is required, not just from a skills perspective, but from an emotional standpoint? What kind of person will be able to withstand the rigors of this particular position? So that's speaking to job design. So we need to make sure that, for us to have healthy workplaces, workplaces are designed in such that the jobs in our workplaces are designed in such a way that all factors have been considered. The second point is speaking to lack of work tools. The speaker that spoke before me, I participated very briefly, was speaking about the new normal and how a lot of employers are expecting employees to work from home, and the tools to help them work from home have not been adequately provided for. So if an employer maybe the owner of the business lives in an estate where there's lights 24/7. They may be detached from the reality of employees who live in homes or in apartments where we still have power outage. Okay, but in designing the work from home scheme, it cannot be, oh, I need you at your desk at 8 a.m. and then you must be there till 5. They may not have all the work tools. Light, power is one. The other one may be internet. The other one may be, they may not even have space to create a desk, to carve out a desk to sit down and work from home. So if you do not provide adequate work tools for your employees, you may be stressing them mentally and then creating an unhealthy workplace in the process. The third factor that often contributes to a workplace being called unhealthy is when you have a lot of contract staff in your workforce. And maybe initially when they came on board, you gave them a 3-month contract. After the 3 months, you gave them the hopes that they will be confirmed and they'll be made full-time employees. And then after the 3 months, you say, oh, no, we can't make you a full-time employee now. You have to do another 3-month contract, and then after that one, you keep elongating the timeline for them to be able the timeline for them to spend in that particular job function. Then they begin to get pressured. They begin to get frustrated that I thought I was coming in for just 3 months. Now 3 months has turned into 1 year. 1 year has turned into 2 years and I'm still a contract staff. So that will begin to lead to mental stress because they are now questioning their ability and so many things go on in that regard. Now I'll run very quickly. I think we're running out of time. The fourth point is external pressure. When we say external pressure, especially for people who are in client-facing roles. So there might be expectations from customers, expectations from different stakeholders. And so if this is not managed properly, employees may feel like, the workplace is unhealthy and the pressure is just too much, they can't handle it. The fifth point is lack of motivation. Exactly, I pointed to how being a contract staff can eventually lead you to lose your motivation on the job because you were promised 3 months and then 3 months has turned into 2 years. You begin to lose motivation for the job and you begin to just behave anyhow. So if we find that anybody within our space, our offices are beginning to get dissatisfied or they lack motivation, we may need to dig deeper to find out the root cause. Now, regular exposure to trauma and prolonged working hours. I wanted to speak about this especially because I know that in Nigeria, for instance, many small businesses, I'm a small business consultant, so I deal a lot with small businesses. Many small businesses do not have the wealth of experience to be able to put all the HR pillars in place within their business. And so I'll use a company that is into logistics as an example. It's a very high risk industry. And a lot of people are now having their own logistics team, okay, in-house. But the question is, how are they preparing this team for traumatic situations? And what do I mean by that? If I run a retail outlet and then I decide to have my logistics team internal within the business, it means that you must make sure you plan for on eventualities, meaning if there's a death within the logistics team, how would you make sure that the other members of the team do not get into a depressive state? They do not begin to think, will this also happen to me? Or begin to have anxiety disorders from maybe losing one of their colleagues. So all of these factors, if they're not dealt with properly, will label your organization as an unhealthy work environment. Okay. So we've looked at the factors earlier in the previous slide that I just shared, but I'll just run through these ones. Some other factors that may be responsible for that contribute to a mentally healthy workplace, meaning that we've looked at the job design. But beyond the job design, beyond preparing how you handle traumatic situations, beyond making sure that nobody spends too long in any given role, beyond all of the factors that I read that contribute to a workplace being tagged unhealthy, for you to build a mentally healthy workplace, you must make sure you pay particular attention to these factors. Factors such that when there's a change within the organization, how do you manage it? What do we mean? If your business is restructuring, if you're downsizing, if you're adding on new members, you're adding on new recruits or hires into your organization, how do you handle it? Again, a lot of people say, oh, we are expanding. But what you fail to realize is that even when your business is expanding, the people who are currently working for you will feel threatened. That is, why are we expanding? Is my position still secure? Do I still have the growth opportunities that I thought I had in the initial organizational structure? What will expansion do to my role? What will expansion do to my current skill set? All of these are pressure points, really, for employees who may not necessarily be vocal to ask questions from their line managers, but they begin to internalize some of your actions and they begin to feel like, okay, we're expanding, we're downsizing. So when you have organizational changes, you must communicate it effectively to your staff and to your employees so that you can manage their anxiety. You can manage their level of panic, going into a panic mode to say, am I safe or am I not safe? The second point is safety and then the environment. Do you provide a physically and mentally safe environment? I just mentioned the mentally safe environment now, meaning when you want to take a decision, do you consider the impact it would have on your employees? Would they panic? Would they be anxious? But if you have a mechanism of, a process in place, a change management process in the organization, your change management process would make sure that you are constantly communicating and communicating and communicating such that nobody can misinterpret any of your actions. Now, the physically safe environment, a lot of people overlook factors such as the lighting condition of where you put your employees to work. It affects the mood. The colors you choose for your office affects the mood of your employees. So all of this should not be done in isolation of your mentally healthy workplace. What are the colors? What are the furnishing features within the office that would enhance the mood and the productivity of employees? Is the lighting good enough? Are their chairs supporting their backs? Or they have to manage the chairs and then when they go home, they go and take paracetamol. After a while, from taking that paracetamol, they begin to wonder why they have to work in a place that inflicts bodily pain on them. So all of these small things that we do not pay attention to actually contribute to how employees feel and how it affects their minds, okay? And the fourth one is recognition and rewards. Do you celebrate your employees when they've done something? And then when they fail to also meet up to expectations, do you give them feedback? In terms of reward, do you renege on your promises or do you fulfill them as at when due? I know a lot of business owners will promise heaven and earth and say that this year our target is 300 million. Once we hit 300 million, we will share, everybody will take home 30 million. And then when the 300 million comes, they begin to renegotiate. What that really does to a lot of people is that it breaks trust. And when you break trust, people begin to, feel undervalued. They begin to feel disengaged, really. And when there's disengagement, you don't know what has also gone into their minds, in terms of, this work, I'm just enjoying it because I need to pay rent. This work, I'm just enjoying it because what will I eat? So when employees begin to get into that state, then you know that, you are not doing things right in terms of recognizing them, celebrating them, and making sure that what they deserve is being given to them per time. The fourth point is work-life balance. We know that the new normal, I'm sitting in my living room right now. I haven't stepped out all week. I've been working from home and everybody else in my office. But the new normal can also be very isolating, right? But before COVID started, we had always had a flexible work model. And the reason is very simple. I looked at the traffic situation in Lagos and I said to myself, I'm burning out. I burn out very quickly because I have to spend endless hours in traffic. How much more my employees who do not have private cars? I'd rather, we take one day off a week or 2 days off a week and work from home so that your body can be in a state of rest and you can be more productive. So in the new normal, a lot of people have been asking questions. Would offices eventually resume? We know that not all businesses can afford to do remote work, but for most businesses that can afford to do remote work, I think it's something that we need to promote, especially in the environment we live in where transportation is a big concern. I know that, I've witnessed several scenarios while in traffic, seeing somebody who is corporately dressed engaging in physical fights with a conductor. And why? I ask myself why. The reason is very simple. They are just frustrated. And, that level of frustration is aggravated by the traffic, the inconvenience in sitting in those buses. Maybe there was no light in the morning. The person had probably gotten up to be at work at 8 a.m. and they've been on the road since 4 a.m. or since 5 a.m. So there's pressure points. And so for us to be able to have a mentally healthy workforce or workplace, we must make sure we consider having elements of work-life balance in all that we do. Okay. The next slide is talking about preventive strategies. How do we make sure that at an organizational level, we are prepared? Because, the truth of the matter is that from my own personal experiences, right, you cannot control who has mental health disorder or mental health issues from who doesn't have it. It's not within your control. But as an organization, you need to be aware that it can happen and that when it happens, what are you going to do? I suffered from psychosomatic disorder. You might check it out after this webinar. Psychosomatic disorder is one of the mental health disorders, that happen from aggravated stress. When you put your body through an unbearable level of stress, it breaks down and just recovers and heals itself. So if I know that I overworked myself, but how many people will come to that place of realization? And if I wasn't my own employer, how many people would have been able to take 6 weeks off work to fully recover? Because you begin to have physical symptoms, and that's the truth. So like I said, many of us are HR professionals here. Read further about mental health and the different ways they can present themselves within your employees. Don't encourage your employees to keep taking malaria medicine when they say, oh, I'm tired, I'm having malaria. It might not necessarily be malaria. Most of it is what? Most of it is psychological. It means that they are burning out. It means that the stress level that they are handling is beyond what their body can take. And so they need to take a break. So it might just be that rather than falling ill every month. So please pay close attention to your employees, especially those that come in maybe once a month or once in 2 months to say, I'm treating the same symptoms, I'm treating the same illnesses. It might not be malaria, it might not be those things, it might be more psychological. So how do we combat mental health issues in the workplace? Like I said, this has to be done at an organizational level where the business owners or the organization itself is saying, what do we do, to make sure that our employees do not break down mentally? When you begin to have that mindset from the beginning, that our employees, beyond not breaking down physically, mentally, they must not break down. So when I mentioned some of the factors that contribute to employees having mental disorders, we spoke about job design. So the solution here, one of the strategies, the first one is pay close attention to your job design. How are your jobs designed? Is it designed to cause stress? That is did you design the jobs to say, this person is a receptionist, but in addition to being a receptionist, they will go to the bank 5 times a day. They would send out emails. We must use them to their maximum capacity. You are poorly designing that particular job role. And what would happen is that more often than not, that particular role will break down because you have not allowed it to find some breathing space or rest in doing the job. So let's not always look at the bottom line, maximizing employees to the fullest. We need to look at, I'm not saying, there should be lower productivity expectations. No, but I'm saying what, in view of the job role and responsibilities, what do you consider good enough? Factoring in the active hours and the inactive hours. The second point is promote protective factors at an organizational level. One of such factors you can incorporate is to have one-on-one, incorporate a one-on-one session as an HR person across the organization. If you're a large organization, train your line managers to have these one-on-one sessions on your behalf, because you may not be able to go through the entire organization, especially if you have multiple branches and outlets. So the idea is have, a channel for people to tell you exactly how they feel. Have a channel to be able to be connected to the larger team, such that you know who is at their lowest point, and you know who needs some form of support or the other, and then from those who are fine and who are happy. But if you generalize, you will not be able to pinpoint those who may be struggling with one thing or the other. You may not necessarily be struggling with work. It might be at the home front. But if you don't have those engagements, then you are not aware of what the issues or what the tipping points might be that may push them to the point where they have a mental disorder or a mental illness. The third point is you must promote and facilitate early help seeking. Again, mental health, unfortunately, mental health disorders and illnesses is not something that most of our general practitioners in Nigeria are trained to recognize. And I'll use my own example that I mentioned earlier. I'll use my story as an example. I didn't know I was experiencing psychosomatic disorder until I'd gone through about 5 different hospitals and they couldn't diagnose what was wrong with me. But I now met somebody else who was trained outside the country, where they have developed a system to identify who is suffering from mental health from who is suffering from normal clinical disorders that have physical symptoms. So it's imperative, again, like I said earlier, for us to study and to research this particular growing area of concern globally in Nigeria and as practitioners, so that we are aware of the symptoms. And when we are aware of the symptoms, we can begin to say, okay, you might need to go, for some sort of therapy. You might need to speak to somebody. You might need to seek professional help. We can begin to maybe say, what you're dealing with is too much for one person. You may need to speak to someone beyond your pastors in church. Maybe you need to seek medical help. So if we promote and then we're aware that some people within our organizations may need mental health support, then the organization will create a plan for making sure that you can seek help early for those who may be affected. The fourth one is increase awareness. Have your newsletters, talk about it, your tHRive sessions, talk about it, have one-on-ones, like I said, mention it, so that people are self-aware and you are not just waiting for it to happen. Create open conversations. Yes, when you have those conversations, those forums, let people be able to tell you what they feel about it. It's nothing to be ashamed about. It's a physiological disorder. And it's the same thing as having a heart problem. If you have a heart problem, you can have a mental health problem as well. Support workers recovering from mental illness. So you must have a support system. You must have a support structure or framework that says that, well, somebody who suffered some form of domestic abuse, or they suffered rape, or they suffered one form of, trauma or the other. Maybe someone lost their son, their daughter. How do you ensure that they can recover? How do you set expectations? You don't just say, oh, are they the only ones? These things are deeper than we think. Because we've never experienced them, does not mean that they don't exist, does not mean that the impact is not there. So we must create that framework to say that anyone who's gone through any of this life-changing situation and circumstance while working here, or maybe before, this is how we must, create a support system for them so that they don't fall into a depressive state, or we don't aggravate the mental health issues that they may have been dealing with in the past. Okay, so some of the symptoms we need to look out for post-COVID-19, which I have seen, in many people that I've interacted with lately. People are having trouble concentrating. A lot more people are irritated. There is no money, so it's understandable. People are angry. They are, frustrated. They don't know what's going to happen. People are edgy. People are afraid. So all of these emotions, there's so many, and they're happening at the same time. So we need to be aware of these emotions as employers and make sure that we are empathetic. Again, that word is very critical at this time. I know that businesses have had to lay off employees. Employers have not had salaries to pay for months. They don't want to shut their businesses. Some people have lost their loved ones. So many things have happened in 2020. But beyond all of these things happening, we need to make sure that we are looking out for the signs, and we are creating avenues of hope, avenues of support for all of these people who are vulnerable and who are among us. So let's look out for these signs. They are warning signs that somebody needs help. And so let's reach out to them as best as we can. Benefits of building a mentally healthy workplace. We said that when you build a mentally healthy workplace, people feel happy. I mentioned it earlier. People bring their A game to work. People are more creative. They are more in tune with what your vision and your mission for the company is. They are go-getters. You don't need to babysit them to do what they need to do, because they are mentally happy. They are stimulated mentally to want to be there, because the environment is safe. The environment is committed to their well-being. The environment is trusting. The environment cares. So all of those things are the things that you stand to gain as an employer if you create an environment that makes people, their mental states healthy. You achieve more results, basically. So the other point that we said you need to note is that don't wait. I already said it. Don't wait. Create a framework. It's not knowing that has made a lot of people surprised these days when they say somebody's going through a mental health disorder, because we didn't know that it truly exists within our society because of the stigmatization over time. But the truth is that as an HR professional, if you run a business, don't wait for people to show signs of mental health conditions before you act. Create a framework to prevent it. Prevention, they always say, is better than cure. Now, one of the things we've also highlighted here is that some roles, some occupations are more prone to mental health disorders than others. And so you must pay attention to this, to people within these occupations. Teachers, sales roles, nurses, social workers, lawyers, doctors and medical staff, police and military officers. And the reason is because these people deal with multiple personalities. They are people facing. These roles are people facing. And so because they have to take on so much, many of them may suffer some form of, oh, I'm overwhelmed. Oh, this is too much. And that's why they always say that there's a ratio There's a ratio of teacher to students in the classroom. There's a ratio of how many sales contacts a salesperson must bring in, nurses, how many patients they see in a day, doctors as well. And so we need to be aware, if you're an HR person in any of these occupations, you need to create a framework to support the mental health of your people. It's more critical for these occupations. Now you can ask me, my organization would like to support mental health disorders, or create a framework, or support people who are going through it. But we're looking at, how do I ensure that I don't get resistance from the leadership team? The answer is glaring in these 4 points. We've always said it, is popularly brandished out there, that employees are the most valuable asset of a business. It's the truth. Without employees, you don't have a business, because you can't do everything yourself. So the reality is that you must make sure that you present this business case to your organization if they ask you why they should prioritize creating a framework for managing mental disorders and illnesses in your organization. Again, the second point is that we operate in a mental economy. Everything is now creative based. That is, we're not doing factory. We still have people working in the factories, but most jobs, most white collar jobs, require you to be able to use your mental faculty. And so you need to make sure that the people using this mental faculty, that mental faculty is being taken care of, okay? So it doesn't break down. So that's the second business case that you can make, for prioritizing the mental health of your employees. Now, the third one is that the mind is the engine room. I just mentioned it's everything that we create, everything all the competitive edge that a business is trying to innovate and bring to its customers happens in the mind. So the mind is the engine room, and everything happens within our minds. So we must make sure that we protect it. So the fourth point is that there's no superiority with dealing with illnesses. Mental health is as important as cardiovascular diseases or other common ailments. So you can present it back to your CEO, to your board, when they ask you why they should prioritize mental health. Why not? It's the same. If we can take care of someone who has a cardiovascular disease, then we should take care of our people who may be suffering mental health disorder. Okay, so those are the 4 points that would help you to make a business case for prioritizing the mental health of your workforce. Okay, we're running out of time. Fadikemi, I've seen your question. It's one of the questions I saw on LinkedIn this week. Very interesting question, and I would answer it very shortly. So, how do you manage mental health when it happens? We've looked at, preventive strategies that the organization can take. Those are proactive strategies. But when it does happen, what should you do? So we have 2 sides. That is, how do you reduce the risk? And then how do you promote recovery? This particular slide, I will give credit to Onta Institute. You can check them out online in Australia. They provided a very good framework for me to be able to put this together this afternoon. So if someone is suffering from a mental disorder or mental illness, what should you do? Or what are the preventives? How do you reduce the risk as an HR manager? The first one is support good health practices. What does that mean? It means that you have to have a culture that promotes good health in the first place. Are your employees exercising? I mean, for me, as a small business owner, I ask my employees, get the sun. Don't stay indoors. Make sure you work out at least thrice a week. Make sure you are telling me, you are onboarding to somebody, maybe not just me, but speak, create that culture where people can take care of themselves. Make sure you eat breakfast. Make sure you have a balanced diet. Make sure you are hydrated. All of these are preventives. It helps you to reduce the risk. And when people have open communication as well, it helps to reduce the risk of developing mental health disorders, because there's no isolation. You're not, I mean, we're working from home, but how do you ensure that there's that constant battle? So when you have meetings, what are you talking about? Do you create opportunities to crack jokes? Jokes, they say a smile, does the heart, whatever. But I'm sure it does much more for the mind. So crack jokes, find things that will make the team laugh from time to time. It promotes good health. Then reduce individual risk factors. I'll just go to the next slide where we expatiated on it. Reduce individual risk factors by making sure you set a drug and alcohol use policy, by making sure that employees, had mentioned that earlier, who are going through a traumatic or difficult life event, they are supported. Someone might say, oh, my mom is undergoing chemotherapy, or well, my dad had a surgery. How do you support them in these difficult times of their lives? Now, the other one is occupational risks. We mentioned flexi hours. You must promote flexible working hours, ensure that employees are not working, they're not tired or bored too often, because when they don't have anything to do, they begin to think all sorts of things. They're wondering, is this business going to survive? Will my salary be paid? Those are things that I have gone through as an employee when I had a job. When we don't have anything to do, I begin to ask myself, would we get salary this month? This one that the business is not coming in, what would happen? And all of that. So reduce occupational risk by communicating. That's what I would say. Ensure employees are not tired or bored. Give them projects. It might not manifest into real-time work or money, but let them be working on something that would bring out their creativity, something that will make them interested in what they're doing. Then reduce occurrence of accident incidents. The logistics company I used as an example, if you have continuous training programs for your dispatch riders, maybe early in the morning, you have a session with them before they go out, what they must look out for, why they must make sure that they observe the road traffic laws and regulations. It will help them prepare for the day, and then tell them when they should take a break, how often they should take a break, so that they're not rushing and saying, oh, let me just go and deliver all 200 items at once. After then, I will eat my breakfast. That's when I'm going to take a break. So help them to plan their day. I'm using that as an example, but it cuts across occupations as well. Help employees plan out their work so that they don't burn out. Those who are in manufacturing, help them. Obviously, they have units of production that they must complete in a day. Have a strict plan, and then have rest periods in between these production plans as well. So ensure strict compliance within your organization, within your organization's bullying and harassment policies. I would have loved to speak more about this, because this does a lot more harm than good, and a lot of people do not understand it. What is the line manager subordinate relationship? What is it like in your organization? Does the line manager speak in derogatory tones or manner to the subordinates? If that is happening in your organization, you are subconsciously causing mental strain on the employees, because you begin to make them have feelings of, I'm not good enough, feelings of, oh, I'm just dumb, I'm not smart, or feelings of inadequacies, which may lead to depressive tendencies. So you need to make sure that your organization has strict bullying and harassment, there's compliance with your bullying and harassment policies, so that you can protect the mental health of your employees. Okay, so the role of HR in managing mental health in the workplace, this is recovery. So recovery, how do you ensure that people can recover faster and then they can get back into work? First point, which I mentioned earlier during the webinar, is that early detection. So teach your employees how they should self-evaluate. If you are feeling a sense of burnout, let them have an avenue or channel to communicate it. We know that some employees will come and say, oh, I'm tired every time, they will make up that excuse. You need to have parameters to know when somebody is truly overworked and when they need to take a break. So, and then let them also be self-aware to a point where they say, look, I'm having recurrent malaria episodes or symptoms that resemble malaria. Let them also be able to track their wellness, have a wellness chart for their lives so that they can say, I think there's a problem here. Maybe I need to take a break. Maybe I need to see a doctor. Maybe I need to speak to somebody else other than a GP about some of my symptoms. So the second one is create an empathetic culture. I've said that as well. Let people understand that mental health disorder it holds the same weight as a cardiovascular disorder or problem. Okay, train line managers on how to offer support and express genuine concern for subordinates. So let line managers not make jokes or derogatory remarks that don't let us give you more work now before you say that you are mentally stressed. Let them be aware that these are real issues and they affect real people. And so let them train them on how to offer genuine support so that subordinates can recover and there can be that confidence of support, within the organization. So in terms of how they recover and come back to work, develop an employee assistance program. A lot of people laid off employees within COVID. I'm not sure many organizations had an employee assistance program in place before they took this decision. But it is very important for you as HR practitioners, well, for us as HR practitioners to emphasize the need for employers to develop an employee assistance program, especially when we are laying off employees. We know that the business may no longer be able to pay or afford to pay for certain roles, but how do we do it? And then when we do it, when we lay them off, how do we assist them in getting jobs? How do we prepare their mindset such that it's not a failure mindset that they have leaving your organization, but they have a mindset of empathy that sees the organization is empathetic towards them, but it has to do what it has to do. So you must make sure that you develop a robust employee assistance program and workplace counseling for your employees, especially those who will be affected by termination decisions. The second one is create partnerships with mental health providers. Unfortunately, there are not so many of them, but you need to find them. When you Google it, just Google mental health hospitals in Lagos or wherever you're residing, and then come up with a list. Find out what it costs, and then present a budget from your budgets, your health budget for the year. Find out what you would allocate to providing mental health assistance to employees. Now, let me say that counseling, providing external counselors goes a long way in the recovery process as well. People just need to onboarding, they need to talk. So if all you can do is provide, once a month, external counselor who doesn't know them, who may not, they don't feel will judge them. If that's all you can provide for in your budget, find a way to incorporate it. It will go a long way in promoting the overall mental health of your employees. Then the third point in the recovery, how you support recovery of those who've suffered mental health disorder is that you must manage their absences and their return to work very well. What does that mean? You must check up on them when they are away. What is your frequency of checkup? What are you asking? You must be genuine in your checking up. And then when they return back to work, how do you make sure that, you're not overburdening them with work to a point where they break down again? So you must plan plan a support structure for their absences and then how they return to work as well. Okay, so this is the last slide before my conclusion. So I've said here that some of the questions that we need to reflect on as we interact. I'm an external HR consultant. Many of us, I don't know, may be internal. But if you work in an environment where your employees make remarks such as, I cannot come and kill myself, the workload is overbearing, and I don't even have time for myself. Nothing is worth more than my peace. Nothing I do is ever good enough. All this organization cares about is money, 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 nothing more. Or they say, my family needs me too. Then you need to pause and then take a look at how they are feeling. Take a look at the pressure points that these employees that are making these statements have had to deal with. You need to look at your jobs, the job design. Are they truly overworked? Are they overloaded with tasks and responsibilities? You need to take a step back and say, how do I ensure that they have work-life balance? How do I ensure that they don't see work as a burden, but they see work as somewhere they come to derive pleasure in what they know and in what they can do and in what they can create. Okay? So please, let's take time to reflect on this. Even as I conclude, I'll say that the brain is like any other organ in the body, and it must be given the same attention we give to other organs and body parts. The second point is that the mind controls everything. Everything we would ever be, everything we would ever do, emanates from our minds, and so we must do everything we can, to nourish and to protect this great asset. It's the biggest asset that we have. All the other assets are equally important, but without your mind, you can't do anything. So a few quotes that I found. I'm sorry. Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it isn't so. And this particular quote is speaking to the judgments that we make about people who suffer mental health disorder. We may not be able to understand it, we may not be able to ration it, but just because we don't understand it does not mean it is not their reality. So empathy is important, just as Lemony Snicket has stated with this particular quote. The second quote I found very interesting says that anything that's human is mentionable, and anything that is mentionable can be more manageable. When we talk about our feelings, they become less overwhelming, less upsetting, and less scary. This quote is by Fred Rogers. And what this quote spoke to me, when I saw it, was that you have to create avenues for people to talk. Let's not suppress what people have to say. Let's not suppress our subordinates. Let people have a voice. Let them be able to say what is on their mind, without any form of judgment and prejudice. This way, we are promoting their mental health. The third and the last quote, before I begin to answer questions, says, if we start being honest about our pain, our anger, and our shortcomings, instead of pretending that they don't exist, then maybe we'll leave the world a better place than we found it. Now, this is speaking to each and every one of us individually. We must make sure we are honest about what we feel, what goes on through our minds. When we are angry, we must say it. When we are happy, we must show it. When we expect more, we must express it. Because when we have suppressed feelings, then it may tip us to the negative side that we all do not want to find ourselves. So let's take care of ourselves, and let's make sure that our organizations as well are positioned to support the mental health of employees, especially in this new normal. So I will take questions. Thank you very much for listening. That's the end of my presentation, but I will go straight to questions. The first one I saw from
Thank you very much, Tom, for that deeply insightful session on
Thank you,
such an
Jide.
important topic. It was really awesome.
Thank you
And so
so
we're
much.
getting some feedback already, and like I said, you have some questions, so you can just keep your slides on. Don't worry, I'll help you read out the questions.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, all right.
Okay. How was the session? Let's get some feedback and also questions. I see one, like two related questions already, so you might just want to take that first from Fadekemi and Obaseki. So they are basically asking who manages the mental health of HR? Since HR is taking care of every other person, who takes care of HR?
Okay, so like I said, I saw this question on LinkedIn by a very dear friend of mine. Well, I'll call her a friend because I always call everybody a friend, even though she used to work with me. So I saw the question and I said to myself, oh, this is such an important question. But you see, one of the things I've realized is that for us to hold the position of HR, we have to have some level of self-awareness as individuals for us um, to be responsible for other people. What does that mean? What it means is that I have to be aware of myself, my limitations, my trigger points. I have to be aware of I have to be in control of my emotions before I can then say that I want to help other people to manage their own emotions as well in the workplace. Okay. So when I saw that question, I said, well, the truth of the matter is that yes, HR sits just in between the organizational structure. That is, you're in between the leadership team, then you're responsible for the employees as well. Now, the leadership team is saddled with so many things. They don't have time to be saying, oh, so Tom, how are you feeling this morning? How is the home front? And all of that. They don't have all of that time. But what you can do for yourself, which is very important, is to create a support structure. Your support structure can be fellow line managers. Your support structure can be external HR people in other organizations, but you cannot isolate. You cannot, stay on your own and then say that, oh, today this person told me this, tomorrow this person told me that. You need to have an outlet. Your own outlet can be, again, fellow line managers, if you do have them in your organization, or external HR people like yourself. So compare notes. Let them encourage you. Let them, give you suggestions and ideas. And if what you need, if your mental health support is not work related, again, what is important is to find your own support, create your own support system. I, for one, I have two amazing people that I go to every time I'm on my lowest, at the lowest point of my life. They are always there, and they would always find a way to make sure I come back up. So they are not in any way HR people, but they have a way that they connect with me, and they have a way of saying, don't worry, you can do this, okay, we're praying for you. Let's go a bit spiritual there. But I have those people. Then I have my family. I have my mother. I have my sisters. I just create that outlet. You need to have an outlet. If you do not have an outlet, nobody is an island. That's the truth. Let's be honest. You may not have a huge friend base. Let me use friendship base now. But you need to have that team of support structure that you can always go to and say, look, I am frustrated. Work pressure is a lot. This and this is this. Have an outlet. That's what I would say. As an HR person, unfortunately, you are the one everybody comes to with their problems, with their issues. But if your organization has other line managers, find people you can bounce off things, not confidential things, I mean, in this case, but find people you can rub minds with to say, these are common issues within this organization. What do you think? What can we do? And when you have them on your side, it's easier to take that suggestion to management and say, let's do this. And then management will say, okay, where is the data, or where is the source of this information? And you can, both, well, along all the people you've created, all the allies you created for yourself, you can get management buy-in, to some of the issues that may have been plaguing your organization. Okay, so Jide, the next question.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Just before I take more questions, just want to go through some of the feedback
Okay,
just to tell you how amazing the session was. So from YouTube, Awola Jadedayo says, amazing, amazing session. Thank you so much for sharing. Shegun Akinode says, a very insightful session. Thank you, Tom.
thank you.
More feedback here while we wait for more questions. Uchena says, thank you so much, Tom. You have said it all. Getting a support system is key. She says, thank you, Tom. Well explained session. Adede says, the topic is very apt. Thanks, Tom, for taking it up. Elizabeth says, well done.
Thank you,
This
guys.
very insightful. So great, 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 great. Great session. Thank you very much. Let's go into some more questions now.
Okay.
can send in your questions on YouTube for those joining on YouTube, and yeah, as well. Obaseki Samuel says, "Where do you where? Let me read this. Where do you place? I think it means where do you place psychopaths in this discussion?"
Okay. So when you say psychopaths, um, I will believe that you have what's that word? They've been diagnosed to be psychopaths, right? Because we use that word very loosely. And I'll say that because I'm walking on the road and then maybe no, I'm driving. That's a typical example that I'm going to use. I'm driving on the road and then somebody cuts in front and says, and I say, "Oh, look at that psychopath," right? He's not a psychopath. He just acted, in a manner that is strange to me, right? Because he acted in a manner that is strange to me, I cannot label him a psychopath, right? Maybe there are extreme sorry, there's that word I'm trying to, there may be extreme cases of psychopaths, those who just walk into your home. Those ones we watch in movies. I watch movies too. I don't like those movies, but I watch them. They just go into someone's home and then they just begin to butcher them. We can say that those ones have lost their minds. Those ones are psychopaths. And that's why I say that when you ask that question about where do we place psychopaths, are we speaking about those who've been confirmed psychopaths or those who act in a manner that is strange to us and then we just say, oh, because we don't understand them, then they're psychopaths? A lot of people say, oh, most of the downfall drivers in Lagos are psychopaths. I don't agree. And I'll tell you why. We've not been in their situation. We've not walked in their shoes. We've not endured the level of frustration they've had to endure. So we can't understand it. And so because we don't understand it, does not give us a right to label it. So I hope I've answered that.
Fantastic response. Thank you for that. Just going to, I think someone dropped a question in the chat box, so let me
Okay.
find. Um, okay, Adedo is asking, how can you detect? Okay, can everyone hear me? I can see some people complain about my volume. Hope it's fine now.
I can.
Okay. How can you detect an employee who has a mental health issue in the new normal, especially staff working from home?
Okay. So the first thing I would say is that you need to know your employees. Unfortunately, most of us before now probably were not paying attention to them or we didn't develop that relationship with them. So it will be hard for you to detect when something is not quite right with them, when you're now working remotely. And I'll give you an example. So I spoke to someone recently, and before now, I'd met her in person and I've spoken to her several times. But the last conversation that we had, I realized that there was anger in her tone of voice, right? Even though she was trying to be very pleasant, but I could detect that she was probably angry about something. So I let her finish, we finished the conversation and I hung up. But because I know her, I reached out to her again via text message and I said, "Is everything okay with you? The last conversation we just had, you sounded very off and it is very unlike you. When you're ready to talk about it, I will be here." Do you understand what I mean? So I know her, but if it was somebody that I didn't have any relationship with, I probably would have not been able to detect that there was something wrong with her. So she said when she's ready, she would set up set up a meeting so we can talk about what the issues are. But the reality is that, especially in the new normal, you need to make a conscious effort to develop rapport with your colleagues, to develop rapport with your employees that you manage as HR, so that you can begin to pick up the subliminal, the non-verbal vibes that will point that something is wrong, right? The avenue, also, one of the things that I like to do personally, and I tell a lot of organizations to promote, is that don't let people just work and then go home. Let them form relationships, because they spend a lot of time at work. Most of the time is spent at work, and then the other half is spent sleeping. So if the people they work with cannot know them, who is going to know them? Do you understand what I'm saying? So let people check up on each other. Let them have informal conversations. Everything should not be about work. Form a body system, a remote body system. You this week, you're going to be on Tone's case. So you find out what Tone ate for breakfast. We don't want to know as a company, but what we want to know is that you are connecting. Okay? And when you are connecting, when there's something wrong with me, because we've connected, I can tell you. But if we've not connected, there's no way you would know. So to answer that question, it's simple. Make sure you're connected. If you're connected, you'll be able to find out. If you find a way to do surveys as well, maybe ask questions. Some people may respond truthfully, some people would not. But the real way for you to connect to people and get them to trust you is to check up on them, develop a personal relationship with them. Not a personal relationship that is detrimental or that is off limits according to your company policy, but a relationship that would help you to know them. And then when they're in trouble, you can offer assistance.
Fantastic. Thank you for that response.
Thank you.
I hope my volume is better now. Some people still complaining they can't hear me read out the questions. Am I loud and clear now before I read the next question? Let me just get some feedback in the chat box.
Okay.
I just need one yes. Can we all hear me?
Maybe they should wave.
No. Yes, very low. Wow. No, please. Okay, Tom, do you want to read the questions? I don't know what's wrong with my
Okay.
audio.
Let me read the questions.
You can stop sharing.
Okay. All right. Let me stop sharing. Okay, so I see Juliet. Juliet says, the issues of empathy and employee assistance program have become more pronounced than ever before. What do you advise for employees that abuse such support? That's a very good question. But again, let's not forget that even HMO, the normal HMO that covers basic health, I mean, what we term basic, because there's nothing basic. Health is health, and health is wealth. So people abuse that scheme as well. So the best control that you can put in place is to make sure that you can have an evaluation. Have an evaluation system for the employee assistance program. What do I mean by that? You can set the boundaries of how far you want the employee assistance program to go. Some organizations will say that they would help you find another job. Some organizations will say that they would hook you up with a, a, a career counselor. So it can come in different forms, depending on on the budget of your organization, and then to what extent you want to help employees. Now, when you now want to talk about it in terms of health, the employee assistance program can have a policy. You can set a policy that says that if you're going to see a specialist, you cannot see a specialist. I know the therapy sessions usually last between sometimes 8 to 10 times. You need to see a therapist for a minimum period of 8 or 10, depending on the severity of what it is that you're dealing with. So if you set that and say that after the 10-week period, before you can book to see to see the specialist again, you may have to pay out of pocket, or it will have to take a 90 days period for you to be able to see the specialist again. And then if the you don't seem to be seeing the result of why you enlisted a specialist for that particular employee, you can then begin to advise on other, I'm sure the specialist will advise on other intervention strategies and methods that would make sure that the employee is getting better. So I think it's in terms of your policy. How do you draft your policy for such programs? That's what would make sure that people do not abuse it. Then I have an anonymous attendee say that some organizations believe that once there is medical facilities for employees, it is expected that they make themselves available for care. How do we address this going forward? I believe that's what you wanted to say. Okay, so the truth of the matter is that, again, like I said, mental health is just gaining grounds in the awareness of for mental health is just gaining grounds in Nigeria. Before now, people are like, what's wrong with you? How can you say you have mental health? How can you say that you're troubled? You can't be troubled. Why? What's wrong with you? They dismiss it. But as more people are saying that, look, it's beyond what you can see, it's beyond physical symptoms or manifestations. You need to be able to create that awareness first and foremost within your organization such that everybody realizes that, look, mental health issues are real. Once everybody comes to that acceptance first, then you've made step one progress. Now, step two is that how does HR pay greater focus? Beyond, have you signed up for HMO? How do you make sure that you are tracking the emotional well-being of your employees? So you need to then look at your total employee wellness program and say, okay, HMO, check. Employee physical activity, which are all preventives, you've checked. We have a gym subscription. We have this. We promote. We have a peer exercise. It may not be gym, just a walk down your road and log your exercise data. Maybe all your organization can afford, but there's someone driving it. Do you understand? So everything doesn't have to be monetary. You just need to be creative enough to say, how can we make sure that we are checking, we are looking out for the emotional well-being of employees? Someone may be going through a divorce, right? It's not necessarily the company's business to get involved in employees' marital situation, but it is in the company's interest to make sure that the emotional state of the employee while going through that divorce is supported. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you need to make sure that you as an HR person and then the organization designs strategies for you to be able to say, when employees periodically, like I said, have a one-on-one with them once a month. And then what are the questions you are asking? Those questions are going to draw out those who need follow-up, those who need support, those who need encouragement, those who need counseling, and then those who need specialist care. So it's up to you as an HR person to pay particular attention on this issue, which is why I said I advise everyone who's been on this call, please make sure you do an extensive research about mental health so that you can understand it. And from a place of understanding, you can prefer solutions.
Great. Thank you for your responses. I hope my volume is better now. I had to log off and log back in. Some people could hear me while others couldn't.
Okay.
That happens sometimes with Zoom. So any more questions?
No, I don't see any more.
It's been a great session. Thank you for the perspective you brought to this program. Thank you for those very relatable insights. This is a topic we, as a people, as organizations, need to pay more attention to. So I'm really glad you took this up and you delivered excellently.
Thank you so much.
Once again.
Thank you, Jide. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please don't stigmatize. Support everyone that is going through one emotional issue or the other.
Great. Okay. Seems no more questions. So on that note, we'll call it a day. Thank you all for joining. Please take note of the attendance code. This is the last session for today. We'll meet again tomorrow by 9 a.m. There are 3 sessions tomorrow. starting from 9. We are going to be looking at the following topics: crisis and risk management, the role of HR. It's going to be taken by Osamudiame Onwuka. Then we're also going to take a look at a practical guide to crafting HR strategy for small and growing businesses. That's going to be taken by Gubemi at Timomo. And then finally, for the last session tomorrow, we're going to be looking at acquiring talents that fit, taken by Bosumba and Kole. So looking forward to seeing you all. Please invite someone if you know this is going to benefit any of your HR colleagues or friends. Please invite them. It's free to attend, like we always stress. So it would be nice to see you all tomorrow. Okay, thank you, Sheyi. Today we appreciate for your standing by all day. Thank you very much. Juliet says we have had 3 female powerful presenters today. Thank you. Yes. Today is for ladies.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you very much. Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for your comments. Let's continue the conversation on LinkedIn as usual. Please connect to the speaker for today, Tom Roberts on LinkedIn. I'm sure she'll appreciate you reaching out and continuing the conversation there. So
Yeah,
thank
sure.
you all once again. Um, I think that's it. Thank you, Tom, for joining.
Thank you so much, Jide, for the opportunity. Thank you.
You're welcome. Adedoyin, thank you for your comments. Says thanks today for your commitment to this program. It has been very exciting. Thank you very much. See you again tomorrow, bright and early. 3 sessions, 9 a.m., 12 noon, 3 p.m. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you.